easiest ways to make a watch feel like a new watch is to just change the strap. It's something that a lot of people don't even think about attempting on their own, but you can take what seems like a very sporty watch and turn it into a dress watch just by changing the strap. The tools required are all pretty simple, basic, inexpensive things that can easily be found online. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how to select straps, how to change straps, even a little bit about changing from a metal bracelet to a strap or from a strap to a metal bracelet. So when it comes to watch straps, you're going to have two things that are the important measurements. You're going to have the end of the strap that interacts with the case, and then you're going to have the end of the strap that interacts with the buckle. And this is important if you want to try to take the buckle and put it onto a different strap. Maybe you have an original buckle for that watch and you want to pair it to an aftermarket strap. So that'll be important to know that measurement to make sure that the aftermarket strap will accept the same buckle. So that brings me to the first tool you're going to want to have in order to figure out what size strap you need. Ideally, some calipers would work. These will allow you to measure anything. So you could take a strap and you could measure the end of the strap and see that it's about 20 millimeters. Or you could take a watch case and you could measure in between the lugs and see that it is 20 millimeters exactly. You can also use the calipers to measure the inside of the buckle. And the inside of the buckle on this particular example is 18 millimeters. So another option is one of these strap tools. And this is designed specifically for measuring straps and measuring the space between lugs and buckles and things like that. So you have all these numbers on these different sections, and you can just take the case without a strap on it and you can find which one fits. Another way to measure, if I take the spring bar out of this strap, there are holes here. You see the 20, it just fits right there. 18 doesn't fit, 22, it's way too loose. So this is really good for measuring buckles and cases, and it only gives you the measurements that you need. So it's very simple and they're really inexpensive. Or you could just have a little basic gauge here that has millimeters on it, and you can just see 20 millimeters. You can eyeball it here. So you just need some kind of measuring device to get those measurements. So once you have your measurements, then you know what size straps will fit. So because I measure this case and I see 20, I know that I need a 20 millimeter strap. If I don't care about what buckle ends up on there, I could just order any 20 millimeter strap that I like and then use whatever buckle comes with that strap or buy a buckle specifically for that strap. But since I want to reuse this original buckle, I want to measure it and I see that it is 18 millimeters. So now I need to look for straps. If they're aftermarket, I'm going to be searching for 20 millimeter strap with an 18 millimeter buckle. That also tells me what size spring bar to order, the length of the spring bar. I'm going to need two 20 millimeter spring bars to attach the strap to the case, and I'm going to need one 18 millimeter spring bar to attach the buckle to the strap. There's another very important part of the spring bar. When you're selecting spring bars, if you look at the side of the watch lug and there's no hole, That means there needs to be a flange on the spring bar. If there is no extra flange, then you will not be able to get the spring bar out of the watch if there's no hole on the outside of the lug. So no hole on the outside of the lug means that you must order a flanged spring bar. And what that does is it allows us to actually reach in between the case and the strap and have something to grab onto with a spring bar tool. If you have a watch that has a hole, you can use the pin side and press from the outside. And then you don't have to have a flanged spring bar. Next, you'll also want to think about the diameter of your spring bar. And the diameter is going to be important mostly if you're going from bracelet to strap. You're going to see the diameter change. If you're working with a strap, you'll find that usually a 1.5 to a 1.8 diameter spring bar is what's going to be used to connect the case to the strap. I also highly suggest using a stainless steel spring bar and finding the best spring bar you can, because you don't want your watch to fall off your wrist because you used an inexpensive spring bar. So when you've got your strap that doesn't have a spring bar in it, it's as simple as taking the spring bar and just pushing it through. And sometimes it might be tight if the strap is brand new and you actually have to use some force, maybe put it down on your countertop and kind of press it in there and wiggle to get the spring bar to feed through. And then you'll have the little ends that stick out wider than the lug size. From there, you just want to align one side, and I usually work from the back side of the watch. And then once one side is in, you can move the other side. And you can use a fingernail to do this. It's not quite as precise, and if you're not used to doing it, you could have the spring bars shooting all over the place, or you could end up scratching your watch. But with the forked tip on a spring bar tool, you can simply depress one side and then push it in to the hole. And then I always pull on the strap to make sure that it clicks into place. Then you know that it's actually seated in there tightly. When you're changing your strap, if you want to go from a canvas to a leather or to a bracelet, you're going to need that forked end of the spring bar tool, and you'll want to push the strap down towards one side of the case, and then you reach in between the lug and the strap and you grab just that spring bar tip and you bring it out. And then once it's out, you can release and the strap will come off. The same is true for the buckle. You need to reach between the buckle and the strap, depress the end of the spring bar, and the buckle will come off. Then you can use the pin side here to push the spring bar out and then pull it all the way out, and you'll have this little part of the tang buckle. So here's a watch on a strap, on a leather strap, and we can change it. Now you have a very different looking watch. Now, if you're switching a watch to what's a NATO style strap, it's a little different because you actually have one piece of material with an additional keeper here, which will help keep the watch on your wrist in case one spring bar fails. If one spring bar fails, you will still have a closed loop. The watch will be flopping around on it, but it will still be attached to your wrist. Whereas a two-piece strap, if one spring bar fails, there's no more loop and it will fall off your wrist. So for the NATO strap, the first thing you need to do in order to take it off of a watch is actually take that safety piece, undo it, and then you can simply unthread the rest of the strap, and you'll still have the spring bars on the watch. So this watch has no flange because it's an older design, and you can remove the spring bars by pressing through the side of the watch. So you do not need a flange. But you can see how with no flange, you can't actually grab the spring bar from the inside to release it. So you have to have a hole on the side of the case. Otherwise, you'd have to cut these off with a tool and damage your spring bars and potentially scratch your case. Now, if we want to change a watch that has a bracelet, it's a little bit different because getting a bracelet off of a watch can be a little more challenging, but I'm going to show you a couple of tricks I use to make it easier. For starters, when you look at the back of the watch, the spring bars are pretty hidden on a bracelet watch, and it's really hard to get a tool in there to actually move those spring bar pins. So what I like to do is you can open up the clasp and then it exposes the ends of the spring bars. What you can do is at the clasp, there's an easy spot to disconnect the clasp, also using a spring bar. Then the watch is much more like a strap, and it has easy access to the back here. So I always undo one of the pins, either a spring bar or a screw, however it's attached, at the clasp. And I can use my spring bar tool with the forked end in order to release that. Or if you want to be a little fancier and maybe you have multiple watches with bracelets and you change them frequently, there's a tool that is made by Bergeon, and the tool number is 6825. This tool allows you to reach in and get both ends of the spring bar at the same time. And it's specifically designed for watches with bracelets because tight-fitting end links that have no space can be very hard to get the spring bar out of because you can't actually bend to the side once you release one side of the spring. You have to be able to release both sides of the spring at the same time so that the end link comes straight out. However, you can use a standard tool. You release one side and then release the other side, and it'll come straight out towards the back of the watch. So I'm pressing with one finger on the front of that end link, and then I'm releasing one side and the next side. So on a bracelet, you have an end link, and you have the bracelet. The end link is what matches with the case. So we'll go ahead and put that end link back on here with that spring bar, and now I'm ready to put that back onto the watch. And again, I do it from the back side of the watch. I like to do this holding it in my hand, but if you want to use a table as a third hand, that works as well. And one side at a time with a little bit of pressure on that end link. And then you want to pull on it and make sure that it actually snapped into place. And this one is very secure now. And then I can take my bracelet clasp and do the same thing. I'll put it back. And once it is back together, I can wear the watch. But it's much easier if you undo the clasp so that the watch will lay flat for you to change straps out. Again, anytime you put a spring bar in, always do the pull test to make sure that it's seated properly. Couple other tools that I like to have, some tweezers, because those spring bars sometimes are hard to get out of a strap, and you can use the straight end here to push it through, but sometimes they're so tight in there that you can't even push it through easily, and you don't want to risk stabbing into your fingers with a spring bar tool. So what I'll do then is I can grab onto that flange and pull it out. Also, picking up spring bars from the table sometimes can be tricky, and tweezers just make it a million times easier. And then if you have bracelets that have some sort of quick release, like a button push in order to release links, this particular bracelet has that. So I use a little plastic pin to depress those. Other than those tools, I really don't use much else unless I start getting into more complex watches that have maybe 2 screws, a bolt and a nut kind of style attachment, like certain Audemars Piguet watches have. Then you require a tool called a third hand, which is a little weighted tool that has an actual screw, a screwdriver blade on it, and you can hold the watch sideways, place it down, align the screw, and then use a screwdriver on the top. But that's when you start getting into those kind of proprietary attachment methods, I really recommend taking them into the watch boutique or a reseller of that brand who's used to working with those watches. One of the great parts about having a nice watch that's with you your whole life, and maybe even for the next generation, is getting to make it new again by simply changing out the strap. It's a really quick way to kind of scratch that itch for wanting something new or different. And if you don't like a watch the way it is delivered, you can just change the strap, right? It's as simple as, I don't like black leather straps because they don't go with my outfits. Well, that shouldn't make you not enjoy that watch. It's a quick way to customize your own watches without having to open them up or risk damaging them. Plus, strap changes are always something that you can reverse quick and easy. The strap that a watch is delivered with is not permanent. Straps are meant to wear and be used, and they will wear out. So it's kind of fun to be able to choose new straps, new designs, new styles that suit your personality and your fashion sense.